Can you explain more to the listeners what the Toltec tradition is?
Sure. The word Toltec is a Nahuatl word that means artist in English. In fact, Toltec or Tolteca, Spanish or in English, it's just a Nahuatl adaptation of the word artist. If I translate the phrase, the Toltec art of transformation, into 100% English, it means the artist path of transformation. I am an artist, and the canvas for my work of art is my life. And the instruments I'm going to use to create that work of art, it's going to be my body, it's going to be my mind, it's going to be my will, my intent. I can create the most perfect nightmare, or I can create the most perfect harmonious dream.
Hmm.
That's what, when I say I'm a Toltec, I'm actually saying I'm an artist.
Hmm.
As a civilization, it ceased to exist over 500 years ago, either with the expansion of the Aztec Empire or the Spanish Empire, which means at that moment it became an oral tradition. Now, people in Mexico and Southeast United States, the desert, many traditions there have Toltecs, which means it was not just a civilization, but every community in Mesoamerica had Toltecs, as well as all around the world. When you adapt and translate the word, every single community has artists. And that's where the oral tradition comes from. In our tradition, it's like there are people in Mexico that practice it exactly as it was 500 years ago, because it was taught from generation to generation. Then there's people like my family that adapts it with each generation. If I quote my grandmother Sarita, if you practice the Toltec tradition the way I or your father do, you're killing the tradition. You put into practice all that you've learned, and life becomes your teacher with the consequences of the choices you make. And from learning from those consequences, you will use your own words to describe them. That's how, she says, that's how I'll know. If you describe verbatim the four agreements, for example, then I'll know you haven't really applied it. You've done a good job reading the book, but you haven't really applied it. So you start applying it. And for example, after some time, I've learned that be impeccable with the word is an empty symbol whose definition is subject to agreement. Every word we use in our vocabulary is an empty symbol whose definition is subject to agreement. But a word has a meaning because we define it with our intent. So be impeccable with your intent, because it's your intent that gives power to the word. The same energy you use to move your legs, to move your arms, is the same energy we use to create a thought. And at the root of every belief we have in our belief system, there's a yes that gives it power. That's what we know as intent or will. So be impeccable with your intent. And I remember saying this to my father, and he says, good, that's exactly what I meant, Miguel. But since you changed it, let me change it one more time. Be impeccable with yourself, because it is you who's giving power to your word.
You just heard a clip from the Inner Peace with Dr. Reese podcast. Available on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and more. Subscribe today and move a step closer to liberation.
My friend, in order to keep this podcast free for the public, I could really use your help. I'd love for you to consider becoming a patron. In return, I'll provide you with behind-the-scene updates and bonus material. You can also support by listening to my meditations on Spotify or Apple, buying my books on Amazon or Audible, and by simply sharing my work. I appreciate you. Walk with peace.